Welcome to Psychology Matters. I'm your host, Sarah Carpy. Today joining us, I have Dr. Brent Davis from the Davis Holistic Chiropractic Center, co-founder of Heaven Sent Hemp. Thanks for being with us today, Dr. Davis.
My pleasure.
Dr. Davis, there's so much that we need to understand about CBD oil, about hemp. Tell us more about industrial hemp and CBD.
Well, the hemp plant's been used for fiber and food and for medicine for thousands of years. So most people are aware of hemp from marijuana and the whole negative impression that that's left from the 60s and 70s up to current time with abuse of the plant. And then recently, it gained notoriety when epileptic seizures were being stopped. That was what brought it to national attention. A little girl had epileptic seizures, and a particular group of folks in Colorado created an extract that had high CBD in it, and they just happened to get that piece of news covered on national news. And that really was a tremendous timing on their part. great for their company. But they started that really led to this huge trend. And we just see it increasing and increasing, and rightfully so, because CBD is very valuable, but it is only one component that must be part of the whole plant complex for the fullest beneficial effects. And the fullest effect is the key word, because you can take CBD as an isolate, which is the easiest way to sell it and package it. And that's what you see. 95% of the time there'll be CBD products. But most practitioners who've got quite a level of skill realize that when you take the whole plant extract, which has CBD and numerous things, terpenes and polyphenolics, phenolics, and flavonoids, those other compounds all modify the CBD and small amounts of THC, which, by the way, that seems to be necessary also, little amounts of THC. So to get the fullest, what's called the entourage effect, when all of these compounds interact with each other to produce this symphony of healing. It's just quite remarkable. If you take CBD on its own, good quality CBD can be very therapeutic. When you then add the other things to it, it becomes more so in most of the cases.
So if I was a person who thought I was interested in, finding out more about CBD, how could I go about it? I mean, you Google CBD and you find all kinds of distributors and all kinds of people who say they've got it available. How do you weed all that out and make sure you're going to a legitimate provider?
It reminds me of that funny expression, he who has the golden rule, he who has the gold makes the rules.
Right, that's right.
And that's certainly what happens anytime you go to look at anything. Whoever spent the most money is going to get their message across. So
fancy websites.
Yeah, the guys that got the most money to spend, which are all the CBD producers, will have the most information available. So you do have to do some searching. That's the purpose of this kind of an interview, to tell you what to look for. I think I showed this to you earlier when we have something on the bottom of our little packages, which is really cool. It's a QR code that you can scan with a little QR reader that you can get on a cell phone. And it takes you to our website right away, which is heavensenthemp.com. And you see the whole history of that batch. You see the microbiology on it, the terpene levels, the CBD levels, the THC level, right there on every batch. And it's state-of-the-art stuff. You're going to want to see that. Any company should be showing that. Now, here's the rub. And there's a problem here coming up, and I don't know how it's going to be resolved. We're not going to be part of that problem because we're staying with production of the extract of the whole plant, which happens to have 600 milligrams per ounce, and that's a very good, solid quantity, verified by third-party lab analysis, which you can see on that each batch. 600 milligrams is a very good amount of CBD plus all the other stuff. But a lot of companies just have CBD, and it remains. There's a consortium of over 30 companies that are the largest companies that have formed a trade group to try and preserve the right to market CBD. And here's what's going to be coming up. We have drug companies, one particularly in England, that spent about 14 years developing a CBD product that got approved in 2018 as a drug. Sells for $2,000 to $5,000 per month as a drug that is principally CBD, they're going to want to protect their patent.
Sure.
And so all the companies that are producing CBD isolates, I don't know what they're going to do. Because you could argue from the drug standpoint that they're violating the patents. But if it's an extract, a natural extract from the industrial hemp plant, then it shouldn't be, hopefully it will be allowed and there won't be any problem. That's our point of view. I've been producing herbal medicines for almost 40 years. I've had companies that have done that. And this is the last 2 years of tremendous focus on getting a very high quality whole hemp extract. And so you're going to hear about CBD, but that's just one of the active ingredients. And you should know how many milligrams of CBD are in your product. And that's important because the industry, the way CBD is being marketed, is being sold on the number of milligrams. The more the number of milligrams, the higher the price. But that's not the accurate story. So you should have a certain reasonable amount of milligrams. There are products that are 300 milligrams on up. You can get products that are 2,500 milligrams per ounce. And when I began formulating our products, I actually experimented with all those levels. We made one at 300, 600. I had one that was about 1,200 milligrams from the same plant, by the way, so it was all controlled. And I really couldn't see I really couldn't see any difference between the one that was 1,200 milligrams CBD per ounce and 600, because it's a whole plant extract, and all of these other things are very important to get the full optimal therapeutic effects. So it's a complicated deal.
So talk then about what happens in the body. What's the biological activity that goes on in the body?
Well,
once
let me
somebody
let me refer. There's two little pieces of. We'll try and get them little links that'll refer people to these. I produced during the our herb companies have always sold products primarily to health professionals, discerning guys that know about natural products, and naturopathic physicians, holistic physicians that use herbal medicines. That's been our principal group, still is. We really market to that group because they use things more wisely. But we now, we sell to the general public as well. So we have to deal with this issue of, CBD and what is it and so on. All right, so let's see. You can administer these hemp-based products. And by the way, wanting to differentiate between hemp oil, which is expressed from the seed and is it's a fatty acid, essential fatty acid rich oil. It's wonderful stuff, but it does not have any CBD in it. It doesn't have THC.
Oh yeah, you can buy that at the grocery store.
That's right. And it's a very nice nutritional oil. So that's really hemp oil. So what they call CBD oil is, again, a little bit of a misnomer. It's CBD extract, which is then dissolved in oil of some form. All right. Or you can make the whole plant hemp concentrate, which is what we're doing. When you get that, you can administer it orally, or you can administer it through the skin. And I found, and I'm still working on theories, it looks to me like you want to do both. When I see patients, and I made a number of videos with this, we get actual distal or distant neurological effects. I can take a weak muscle that's neurologically impaired, apply our extract to the neck, and within less than 5 seconds, retest that and find different neurology. Now that just, when I started seeing it, I was calling up doctors, I was saying, this is the craziest thing I've ever seen. Hey, let me send you some of this stuff, see if you find the right thing. So one of the ways that I built up an understanding of what's out there in terms of the competitive marketplace is I bought about 15 brand leaders, and I tried to reproduce those things in my clinic. So I would rub their stuff on here, the CBD isolates, didn't produce the same effect. Then I saw some companies that really started using pharmaceutical technologies to create what are called liposomal concentrates, or liposomal delivery of the CBD. And some of those products, when you rub them on the neck, do produce the neurological changes.
So it's all in a matter of how they're extracted?
Yeah, but their whole market thing is you got to have liposomal. No, you don't, because we don't have it. It does a tremendous benefits. I did find that those products did produce the neurological changes, but we had reports of secondary effects that were not good from the people that had messed with it. So my thing about hemp plant, marijuana plant, but really hemp, Somehow, our Creator made a plant with an unbelievable, ingenious internal wisdom. Just the innate wisdom of that plant. It's like it has its own complete computer array, and it figures out when you put the whole plant in there, it somehow gives so many options to the body when you have a whole plant extract that the body can figure out how to use those therapeutic compounds most efficiently. So, kind of summarizing again, you can buy a pure CBD product. You can check what we were saying, where does it come from, how much is there. But here's a big issue that deserves some mention. That does not guarantee biological activity. Okay, so biological activity is what does something do to turn on the body when you put it in your mouth, starting with the receptors sublingually. What happens when you stick something in your body? And there's a whole area of mainstream medicine that is very limited in the understanding of biological activity. This is a very complex subject, but this is in the 61-page white paper. Started referring to it and forgot to finish that. And it's called Understanding the Complexity of Healing Hemp. And that's available on the heavenscenthemp.com website. You can go in and download. That thing is 61 pages long. Then there's a 4-page little paper I wrote that's a summary. It's a webinar that I gave to doctors. And it explains how I developed these products to help understand the whole issue of what's called cell signaling. So when you put something in the body has receptors. You have them in the tongue, you have them, all the tissues in the body have receptors. Those little receptors are what open or close the gateways in the cells and let things like calcium ions, magnesium ions, and other hormonal things, lets the stuff in and out of the cell. Well, that's the key thing. If those little gateways don't open, the body doesn't use the product. So I began studying the whole hemp plant to understand about something called cell signaling, and terpenes, which are one of the other chemicals, are unbelievably effective at causing cell signaling. They make the body open up to receive the chemistry that you're putting in it. CBD does that too, but the terpenes that's why they're so important. They cause the cell signaling. And so, if you've produced a product that has all of those natural things intact, and we continue to spend, and we will be for years, trying to keep getting that process better, to concentrate yet keep everything intact, so the cell signaling takes place. Here's the big thing, underscore this, you don't need as much CBD. You don't need as much. So if you got,
the 600 milligrams,
yeah,
right,
600 seems to be a
1200.
good one. Yeah, maybe we'll make 1,000, but 600 milligrams in an ounce is quite a bit, and you can just take more or less of that. But if you take, and there are products that have 2,500 milligrams per ounce, they don't have as beneficial effect as ours, because they're lacking the stuff that causes the cell signaling. Is that clear? I mean, I hope that it's a very, very important concept. And I was just listening to interviews the other day of leading physicians, medical doctors, who come from the pharmacological model of what's called posology, dose requirements. If you administer something with the wrong dose consistently, you could lose your license. So they're very, very focused on dosing. But with the medical marijuana, maybe when you're using high amounts of THC, that's more relevant. When you're using, and I think there are cases where you really want to know the amounts of high amounts of THC that you're using for a particular late-stage illness. But for the general welfare, that's not really relevant. You can take more or less of it. And so when you listen between the lines for the medical doctors who are used to exact prescriptions of dosing, if you read between the lines, that's what they're pretty much telling you. They're saying, yeah, it's the tolerance, it's the patient tolerance. So we start out with, you take a dropper full of this twice a day, and you can calculate the number of milligrams of CBD, 5 to 10 milligrams per dose of really high quality CBD with the other whole plant extract is wonderful. Sometimes less than that if people are very sensitive. So it's this deal of, if it's mainstream medicine, if you're coming from the model of holistic medicine that's coming out of the medical model, which is pharmaceutically driven, they're looking at what they know, which is the dosing of the milligrams of something. If you're coming out of the holistic medical model, which comes out of, ancient Chinese medicine, Ayurvedic medicine, Arabic medicine, and then coming up into modern times and into modern herbology, and especially, and I have a two-year postgraduate training in homeopathy, if you're using that concept, you're talking about vital energy, which is not measured in mainstream medicine. They don't even measure it. And yet it's profoundly important. So the ways that we measure it is using neuromuscular changes by administering the substance, when it's a harmless substance, which this is. You can stick it in a patient's mouth or rub it on, which I was saying the transdermal, and you can watch what it does. It's not going to hurt anybody. So, we've done that for years to help figure out how certain herbal things act.
So you're really sort of tailoring it to the patient.
Tailor to that individual, and medical physicians are doing the same thing, but this is where I hope my message will get out. There's a way you can measure that. And they're all trained in neurology, and we've all had basic neurology training. Everybody can do this test. If you put a substance into somebody and it doesn't change the neurology, and you put another substance in and it does, that substance that changes the neurology is going to be a better choice. Now, you can measure that in this area called electrodermal screening, very controversial, but it came out of Germany in about the 1950s with a doctor by the name of Wall, and he created something called EAV, electroacupuncture according to Wall. That was an instrument that would measure acupuncture meridian changes when you subjected a person to a substance. But they didn't even have to take the substance. They put the substance in circuit and measured the electrodynamic changes in the body. Medically, they say that is valueless. It's fraud. That's if you can read a dozen websites that'll say it's absolutely fraud. And I can tell you from knowing a lot of the best people in the world that do this, it's not fraud. But like a lot of the things in holistic medicine, it is not generic. It depends on who's doing it. Mainstream medicine likes stuff that's operator independent. They want to know that the drug works the same way for everybody. Holistic medicine, and I love the example of the Chinese physician holding the pulse. It's totally operator dependent. But actually, if you look back in medicine before we had all the technology, when a doctor just had a stethoscope, if he didn't know how to listen to heart sounds, it was worthless. It's operator dependent. And so there's this whole thing in mainstream medicine, no, it can't be operator. Of course it's operator dependent, just get a good doctor.
So true. So I know you mentioned tolerance, but that was a different way that you mentioned tolerance. Does tolerance build up? Is
That's
that another
a very
issue?
good question.
Yeah, I'd like to know.
And I mentioned Dr. Frankel, this guy who's
Yes.
probably administered more of this to patients maybe than anybody else, a medical doctor in Santa Monica. I just heard him say, there seems to be an interesting phenomenon. And he's not talking, I don't think, about these late stage, severe epileptic seizures, but maybe even that as well. But when you start putting this full spectrum of compounds into the body and make some other sensible changes, like, eating properly and changing the horrible diet that most people are using, when you do all of those things together, which introduces other variables, right? So it's not a controlled study, right? And that's one of the problems. But we always make dietary changes, which is part of the recovery, stops inflammation. When you do that, and you give the benefit of all of those cannabinoids and the other compounds, his comment was, and my observation is as well, over time, the body actually starts rearranging its biochemistry, and you may need less over time.
Interesting. So
now, I've only
opposite
been,
of what you would expect
you'd
to
bet,
happen.
and I've only been using this extensively in my practice for about 2 years. So I don't have enough years to, I think he's been using it about 8 or 10 years, so he has more years to look at that. But you see, we're seeing people that don't have to use it as often, actually. We'll start out with them using the transdermal twice a day and the oral drops twice a day. And as I said, I believe the receptors, in fact, the skin receptors are different than the receptors that are in the internal organs that are cannabinoid sensitive. So I think by administering it transdermally and internally, you get the maximal benefit. And after a while, when I see people getting out of pain, more joint mobility or greater energy or better sleep.
Sure.
I mean,
And,
my
you know,
gosh.
lack of sleep really
Ooh.
does cause a whole history.
So there are a lot of different varieties. We're experimenting with 2 varieties this year that are going to probably produce stronger sedation for sleep. But this is a long ongoing study. It's really interesting how much work has to be done to really understand the plant. We're still, in these products, we're still trying to get one thing that has the broadest range of activity. So I had a bunch of patients that had tried all of the things that people use in holistic medicine for sleep. They'd used, numerous different things that are out there, amino acids and various different things to try and help them sleep. They came in and they said, even the prescription meds aren't working. And on several of those people, I've seen this work. It's miraculous. It's just life-changing.
So if somebody wanted to obtain your products or wanted to see you as a patient, how would they get in touch with
Well,
you?
the products can be ordered online, heavenscenthemp.com. The company's, 5 days a week. It's in Lobelville, Tennessee. And it's online presence, heavenscenthemp.com. And at the end of this piece, we'll show some contact phone numbers. My website is davisvitalhealthcenter.com. And I see patients Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. And then the rest of the time, I'm out on the farm and working at the company. So,
Sure.
yeah.
So, so you actually are, helping
Yeah,
to farm and do all this
yeah,
too.
yeah.
I
But
mean,
let me to put in
so I
another
wanna
comment.
understand about that.
We hope that we see more. I hope that I see more of this. As I get older, I hope I see a young breed of physician that take this approach. What was the doctor 500 years ago and 1,000 years ago? He was the pharmacist, and he was also the farmer.
Sure.
He was out there, and to this day, I've done a lot of work in the Amazonian basin, the high Andes in Peru, and I've been around the true shaman tradition. They make their medicines. They're in the jungle. They harvest the stuff, and then they go and they see patients. Well, I do that too. and you learn a lot by doing that. You
More
cannot
traditional.
sit and just simply read a journal article. There is a communication that takes place in the natural world. And when you are out there listening to that, it helps guide the physician in how to use the products. So I hope that's a message that a lot of doctors take. It's good, go on out and get to your local, hemp grower and go on out and look at the plant. Spend some time walking in it because you'll get more information about it.
Absolutely. That's fascinating. So, we did talk a little bit more about how to make sure we're getting a legitimate product, and that's just been so fascinating. Can you tell us more about what type of patient comes to see you? I mean, what are some of the things that you're finding in your practice?
I had someone with a stroke just this week, 2 new patients this week. I had a Parkinson's patient and a stroke patient. I get a full spectrum. I see kids that are 7 days old. We have a general practice, and the doctors that are trained the way that I'm trained, we have a general practice, and I can't speak strongly enough about those wonderful the few guys that don't get enough recognition that have this kind of training, because when you come in and you're not in an emergency care situation, you're not in a late-stage illness, what you want is a doctor that looks at your whole system. They understand your mental, psychological framework pretty quickly. It doesn't take long to figure that out. From a non-psychiatric, but just, general wellness standpoint, where's the stress level at? What's the person eating? And what are they complaining about? That's when somebody comes in, I say, well, what do you want to improve in your life? I do phone consultations as well. And that's how I start. What do you want to improve in their life? And if you listen to the patient, they're going to tell you. So they'll say, I hurt here. And I say, stand up and point to exactly where you hurt. And I make a note of that. And the guys that are trained in proper structural care, we don't dwell on that. Most of the time we can fix that pretty quickly. Pain, my shoulder hurts. It's fairly fast using applied kinesiology and some of the newer state-of-the-art ways of taking care of those pain problems. It's the metabolic stuff. The people that have eaten too much sugar for 20 years. The people that are pre-diabetic. The people that have a later stage, then that takes more work. But yeah, I would like more people, and I'm seeing that. I'd like more people coming in that are wellness care patients, because the biggest thing that hemp does is helps us deal with unrelenting stress.
And that's the thing. Sometimes it's stress related or some other,
most people, whether it's obvious or not, they have a large component of stress which is causing abnormal physiology. So when you change the diet, get rid of inflammation from a better diet, and you stick in hemp, whole hemp, you immediately help them deal with stress. So many things get better.
Sure. Anxiety and depression come into play too as well.
Mm-hmm.
It's just taking that holistic approach, that looking at the whole person, which
What are you
makes a
eating?
huge
The old
difference. Yeah,
expression,
sure.
you know, are you digging your grave with your teeth?
Exactly, that's
You know,
true. You know,
uh,
sleep and exercise and all those things that you need
and
to do to take care of your body.
yeah, there's a we went to a seminar recently, and one of the doctors had been practicing for many, many years. He spoke for a whole hour on all the things that no physicians talk about that are so important, like chewing.
Oh, well, chew your
You
food.
chew. If you do not
Swallow it
chew
whole.
and look at people that are in a busy environment, they take one or two and swallow it, and then they have to take 20 supplements to try and take, if you just simply chew. So there's a lot of old wisdom that seems to be lost.
Certainly.
And we try and put that in place in our practice very, very much, help people get back trained to how to eat properly, chew properly, so on, elimination, you know, how should that be, you know. And then you put in the positive nutrition, of which my favorite thing now is the hemp products. Yeah, yeah. There are some people that apparently are lacking cesium and rubidium, or excuse me, rubidium and lithium. These are trace elements.
Yeah, of course.
Lithium should be in the soil, but it's being very depleted. So tiny amounts of lithium in the very small milligram or even microgram level. And rubidium is another trace mineral. Sometimes when you add those things, this is something I just learned recently from another doctor, the people will be able to use hemp better. Because when they take it, they have an intolerance because their neurotransmitters can't keep up. And when you add those elements, sometimes that helps. In a small percentage of people, I see that.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
So just like you said, it's more than just having CBD.
Yes.
You just really have to look at a big picture of what you can take.
But if you get the whole plant that's been extracted, you can verify the amount of CBD in it, and you've got integrity. And you know, I always tell people, for heaven's sakes, use your intuition. You ought to be able to look at somebody and figure out where they're coming from.
That's true. That's a good note to
Don't
end on.
respond
Thank
to
you
the
so
fanciest,
much.
glossiest thing, because it may not be the best.
Well, Dr. Davis, thanks for joining us
My
today.
pleasure.
This has been a great segment. You've been with Psychology Matters today. Please check us out on Facebook and Psychology Matters TV. You can find our videos on YouTube. I'm Sarah Carper, your host, and this has been Dr. Brent Davis with us today talking about CBD.